Hey, welcome to Giraffe Academy. My name is Mike. In this tutorial, I want to talk to you guys about working with while loops in Ruby. So a while loop is basically a structure that we can use inside of our Ruby programs, which will allow us to loop through a particular block of code a specific number of times. So I can basically write out my while loop and I can put some code in there. And as long as a certain condition remains true, I'll keep looping over and executing that same code inside that while loop. There's a lot of situations in Ruby where we're going to want to use loops. We're going to want to do something continuously until we need to stop. And so while loops are a great way to do that. And in this tutorial, I just want to give you guys a broad overview of while loops. We'll look at the most basic type of while loop you can write. We'll just talk about the core concepts behind them. So over here, I can actually create a while loop. And the first thing I want to do is actually make a variable. And this isn't 100% necessary when working with while loops, but you'll see how this variable comes in a second. So I'm just going to call the variable index, and I'm going to set it equal to 1. So we have a variable index, and it has a value of 1. And down here, I can actually create my while loop. So the first thing I'm going to do is just type out while, and then what I need to do is I need to specify a condition. And you always want to make sure that you end these off, so I'm just going to put an end down here. Now, here's basically how while loops work. All of the code in between while and end, so all the code inside of here that we're going to put inside there is going to get continually executed. So it's going to keep getting looped over and keep getting executed as long as this condition is true. So as long as the condition that we specify right there is true, then we're going to keep executing the code inside of this loop. So over here, I can actually specify a condition. So I'm going to say while index is less than or equal to 5. So essentially what I'm saying is while index is less than or equal to 5, I'm going to keep looping through the code inside of here. And actually what I can put in here, we can just put whatever code we want to keep looping over. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type puts, and I'm going to print out the value of index. So I'm going to say puts index, and then down below here, I'm actually going to increment the value inside of index. So I'm going to say index is equal to index plus 1. So basically every time through this loop, I'm printing out the index, and then down here, I'm incrementing the index. And actually, I want to show you guys something that's cool we can do in Ruby. I have here index is equal to index plus 1, but I can actually, instead of saying that, I can just say index plus equals 1. And whenever I say plus equals, you can also use minus equals as well. This is basically just going to add the number over here to index. So this is going to add 1 to index. So that's kind of a little shorthand we can use in Ruby. But back to the while loop, this is going to keep looping through the code inside of here as long as the index is less than or equal to 5. So let's think about what's going to happen here. Actually, let me just show you guys. So why don't we execute this code? I'm going to run the program, and you'll see over here, I'm actually printing out values between 1 and 5. So I'm printing out 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So maybe this is what you expected to happen. Maybe it's not what you expected to happen. Either way, I'm going to walk you guys through exactly what happened. So over here, it says while index is less than or equal to 5. So remember, we're going to keep looping through this loop as long as that's true. So here's how the execution of this program goes. Ruby creates this index variable, gives it a value of 1. The first thing Ruby does when it gets to this while loop is it checks this condition. If this condition's true, then it's going to start looping through. So in our case, this condition is true, right? So Ruby's going to go ahead, it's going to print out the index, and it's going to add 1 to it. Once Ruby has finished executing the code inside the while loop, the next thing it's going to do is go back up here to the top of the while loop, and it's going to check this condition again. So every time Ruby goes through this loop, every time it loops through the code, right, it's going to go back up and it's going to check the condition again. So every time through the loop, we're constantly checking the condition. So in this case, we incremented the index, so the index is now equal to 2, which is less than or equal to 5. So we're good to go, right? The condition's true. So now we'll execute all of the code inside of here again. And then again, we're going to come back up and check the condition. So every single time we're going and we're checking that condition. Eventually, index is going to be equal to 6, right? We're going to get to a point where, index was equal to 5, so we printed it out, and then we added 1 to it. So now index is equal to 6. We're going to loop all the way back up here, and suddenly this condition is going to be false. And when this condition is false, we're gonna break out of the loop, so we're not gonna execute it anymore, and we're just gonna move on to the next line of code. So that's basically how while loops work. We specify a condition. As long as that condition's true, we move on. And that's how we can get this output right here. So for example, if I was to change this to like 8, now we're gonna print out 1 through 8 because the condition is only false when we get to 9, right? So we're printing out 8 times essentially. So this is extremely useful. There's tons of situations where we're gonna wanna use while loops like this. Now I wanna point out one potential problem that you're gonna have with while loops. And it's basically called an infinite loop. And an infinite loop is a situation where the condition up here never becomes false. So it just loops through infinitely. And this is something that could actually mess up your programs quite a bit. So you always want to make sure that when you're writing a while loop, that eventually the condition up here is going to be false. Now in certain special circumstances, you actually want to use an infinite loop, but I'd say for most cases, especially as a beginner, you're not going to want an infinite loop. So it's just something to keep in mind. But this is sort of the basics of a while loop. We're specifying a condition. As long as that condition's true, we're gonna keep looping through whatever code is inside of here. So like I said, there's tons of ways for us to use this. And in the next lesson, we're actually gonna build a program where we're gonna use a while loop in order to build a little game. So stick around for that. That's gonna be pretty fun. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to Draft Academy to be the first to know when we release new content. Also, we're always looking to improve, so if you have any constructive criticism or questions or anything, leave a comment below. Finally, if you're enjoying Draft Academy and you want to help us grow, head over to draftacademy.com/contribute and invest in our future.